Funerals actually take a lot more planning than I expected. With us using island cuisine for the first time, of course we were iffy, but once they came and showed us their service, their food, tasted their food and everything, we definitely use them again because their service and food is just awesome.
I have a question for you. Yes. Would you rather have...
Babe, I forgot the ice. I'll be right back.
Okay. Get some snacks too.
Okay.
Hey, excuse me, sir. Did you forget something?
Actually, yes, we forgot a bag of ice for our drinks.
Worth one probetsu. We could take care of that for you. Follow me. You said you needed ice?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything else you needed?
Yes, maybe some snacks.
Sure. Okay, your order's complete, sir. Your order should be here shortly.
All right, great. Thank you.
Sir, here's your order.
All right.
Thanks.
Suzuki.
One probetsu.
I'll ride with the horses, I'll swim through the sea, I'll climb to the mountain tops. Won't you come follow me? I'll take time to notice all that I see, and after I've come so far, you know where I'll be. I'll fly away, fly away, fly away, fly away home. I'll fly away, fly away, fly away, fly away home. But life is a vision, that's how it should be. The world is a canvas, and the choices are free. At the end of the journey, where all is complete, they'll all wonder where I've gone, but you know where I'll be. I'll fly away, fly away, fly away, fly away home. I'll fly away, fly away, fly away, fly away home. Our dreams last forever, for all that we know. The roads come together, and that's where we'll go.
The Pampas,
an elite which will go away.
because we are
Real and direct.
no interest owns us.
And we have no interest but
The truth. Together we are exposing.
corruption.
Together we will reform criminal justice
Together.
We are
Fighting violence.
against women and children.
We here at
Candid
We'll shine the light.
on every corner of darkness.
Together, we are giving a voice
To the voiceless.
and forgotten.
Stay lit.
Together.
Together,
Together.
together,
Together.
we are giving a voice
to the voiceless and forgotten.
We are Candid News Group.
Buenas and half a day. I'm Carlos Pangilinan. Welcome to Kandit.
I'm Johnnie Rosario.
I'm Troy Torres.
I'm Juan Carlos Benitez.
Thank you so much, Juan Carlos, for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
You're the National Committee Man for the Republican Party of Guam, right?
Yes.
Well, I actually want to hear you talk more because I'm always mesmerized by your accent. When Chris Carrillo was here, Democratic senatorial candidate Chris Carrillo was here, you know, his accent was like, but I like your accent.
One of the Latin movie stars says, like, everything sounds better in Espanol.
That's how I feel about
right.
tomorrow. Everything sounds better in tomorrow.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and for representing the Republican Party of Guam today on our show to give our viewers, we're trying to promote the new candidates in both parties. You know,
Sure.
You know how the incumbents and the recycled candidates, they have a base, they have financial support, but the new candidates don't normally have a lot of money to promote and advertise themselves. And we're coming from a position of change, and as we'll have in our discussion, in many ways, the same kind of change that I'm assuming the Republican Party of Guam is pursuing as well. And in other ways, it'll be different, and we'll talk about stuff like that too. But before we get to the pet of the week, do you want to just intro yourself and?
Well, I'm originally from Puerto Rico.
Okay.
I'm an attorney by profession. I went to Washington, D.C. To work for the Office of the Governor of Puerto Rico as a legal counsel. I dealt with furloughing of over 400 workers, so it was a hard time for Puerto Rico and a hard time to be an attorney. I ended up becoming the Director of Intergovernmental Affairs and Legislative Affairs. So I ran the entire lobbying effort for the government of Puerto Rico, did that for almost 4 years. Then I joined the Bush administration to work at the Department of Justice as the highest ranking Hispanic.
I remember that. Yeah.
I was a special counsel for immigration-related unfair employment practices. And
okay.
in D.C., they say the longer your title, the smaller your power. And my power was about to eliminate discrimination based on race, national origin, or perception of that type of discrimination. And I ran the National Origin Working Group for the entire Department of Justice right after September 11. So it was a lot of discrimination that was going on against the Middle Eastern Society and the Sikh community, and the monks among them were very hard hit. And we were able to calm the waters, and it took us a lot of time, and it was wonderful to do. I left that. I joined Cassidy & Associates, which was a lobbying firm that specialized in identifying federal funding streams. In my career, I've represented foreign countries, foreign governments, the states, every single one of the territories of the United States, except the Virgin Islands. And I moved to Guam when Obama became president. I did not want to see or lived in Washington during an administration that I felt was going to dismantle a lot of the things that we had taken so long to do and build up, particularly for a lot of great things towards the U.S. territories.
If I may, I'm just kind of curious because you are from Puerto Rico. And Puerto Rico is, I guess, the parties kind of center around political status.
Yes.
So, what is it like being a Republican in Puerto Rico? Are there a lot of Republicans there, or is that just kind of something that you identify with on the national level?
So I would say Puerto Rico is extremely conservative in a lot of social areas, and. Fiscally, I would like to say that we are, but we're not. But the parties are statehood, independent, and Commonwealth are the main three parties. There's actually a fourth party, which is promotes independence with the use of violence, that has been decertified a couple of times, but it's recognized in Venezuela and Colombia. But I have to say, when the Decolonization Committee meeting occurred here in Guam, the person that was invited to represent Puerto Rico was the president of that party.
The violent one.
The violent one. The one that advocates for the use of violence, which I was shocked and surprised. And when I asked why was that, they told me it was the present government had recommended the individual. Jeez. I said, under no way, form, or manner would the governor of Puerto Rico, who's a statehooder, would have ever recognized this individual. And then they said, okay, we were at the UN, we met these people, and this was the recommendation of the group. But it was really sad because it would have been a great opportunity to bring a number of the leaders. The general counsel for the Pro-Independent Party was my constitutional attorney, and he's a wonderful individual. We agree to disagree where we want to end. I'm a statehooder.
Okay.
But to go to your point, I was a Democrat when I lived in Puerto Rico. I was very active as a Democrat. I moved to Washington, D.C. It took me 6 months to realize clearly that I was not a member of the Democratic Party that existed in Washington. Way too conservative for that. And after 6 months, I actually resigned from the Democratic Party and joined the Republican Party. So there is two very active parties inside the Democrats or Republican, but the day-to-day fighting is more state independent and Commonwealth.
Do the Democrat and Republican parties field candidates to run in Puerto Rico? Or
Yes, but 90% of the Republicans are members of the statehood party.
Okay.
If you're fiscal conservative and you start talking about a stronger relationship with the United States and partnership, it's just a Republican motto of how do you work ends up driving you towards statehood.
Okay.
I do say
so the statehood party is like the center-right party of Puerto Rico.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It is the fiscally conservative party. Yeah.
Juan Carlos, you also developed or you founded the Washington Group. I don't know what the complete name.
It was the Washington Pacific Economic Development Group.
Okay,
yes.
okay. And that's still active, right?
The corporation still exists, yes.
Okay. And you guys were responsible for a whole lot of, because Guam didn't have a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. So what happened was a bunch of businessmen from Guam started to represent Guam's interests in getting defense spending, and working on things like the visa, right?
So
am I talking about two different things?
Two different things.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So GUASA, the Guam USA Strategic Alliance, is a nonprofit corporation that still exists. It was founded by former leadership of the Chamber of Commerce. And it promotes the strong national defense for this region of the world, and tries to serve as a conduit to people understanding the role of the U.S. in the region and the role of Guam in the U.S. Strategy and position. And the fact that it's not just important for the United States, it's really important for our allies to see a strong presence of the United States. I would say we advocate not just for defense presence, but Guam is a showpiece of the United States. What democracy, U.S. democracy, and brings to a jurisdiction or country. So in the case of Guam, we should be perceived as a shining jewel in the Pacific of what democracy can bring, and our system outside of eliminating corruption and oligarchy or dictatorships in a region would end up bringing to any other jurisdiction.
Oh, we're actually going to talk about corruption and oligarchy a little bit later. But let's, thank you. So, but first,
no system is perfect.
Oh, understood. That's a fair point. Do you have any pets?
I do.
What you got?
3 dogs.
You have 3 dogs. Any cats?
No cats. I'm allergic to cats.
Oh.
I used to have a cat when I was very young, a boonie cat in Puerto Rico. Yeah.
Well, 3 dogs sounds like you can use more. So Gain does have. Gain does have. This is Jiggle. Jiggle, I think, is like 3 months old or something. It just looks like the naughtiest cat in the world. Followed by. Who I call the Charissa Tenorio of cats, because she looks like, she's very like regal. She's gonna like prance right by you, maybe snub you. I love you, Charissa. And her name is Geely. She's a little bit older than Jiggle. I'm sorry, I don't have the stuff from Gain's Facebook page on me. But the next one they have is, I think, Rhea, the little puppy. Did I get that right in the order? Oh, this is Rhea. Look how cute this puppy looks. And then the next one is Sir Duke. These are the pets of the week over at Guam Animals Meet at the animal shelter. So Sir Duke is the one that really needs to be adopted because he's the oldest one. People like to adopt the puppies, the kittens, and the cats, but when you get to a dog like Sir Duke here, the chances are that he's not going to be adopted, and as soon as the animal facility fills up, he'll be euthanized along with others who don't get that chance. So Juan Carlos, if you have any room at your house, just go to the animal facility in Jigo. Is your wife going to kill you if you make a commitment right now?
No, but I'm not going to. Our 3 dogs are boonie dogs. So they're rescue dogs already.
Oh, nice.
And
Well,
we
Troy
reached our
has
limit.
10.
And my uncle-in-law just rescued another one from them recently.
Well, God bless your uncle.
Yeah.
God bless your uncle for doing that.
We're big believers in helping, and we spayed our dogs so that
Not
we don't have
surprised.
an issue.
Your wife is from Guam?
My wife's from Guam, yes. It's Chamorro from the Cruz family.
Oh, yeah.
We're part of the
Yeah.
Kodla clan, and my children would be allowed to vote in any vote that takes place. Yes.
Well, I don't think that's even a controversy anymore, right?
Yeah.
From the Davis case, it's like there's no more so-called Chamorro only vote, right? Am I getting that right?
So far, it could be done. You could have a Chamorro only vote if it's done only by private funding.
Yeah.
You cannot use federal or state funding for it.
Dr. McGinch said that a long time ago. He said, if you want to have this vote, just make sure the government of Guam is not paying for it. Basically what he said.
Yeah.
The first question I have for you, well, actually, let me start with a story that I don't even know if you'll remember.
Okay.
But,
The first day I met you.
No. We've known each other for a long, long time. So, in politics, Kandit land, in politics, when you have a position in the government of Guam, and you run into social circles or whatever, you're going to make a lot of friends who will not recognize you once that position runs its course, once you're done, or if you get in trouble or something. But I don't think the Republican Party knows this. It's a very personal thing and a very...
It mattered.
It mattered to me,
Yes.
but and maybe it matters to you, but it was a small moment in time that I'm not sure that you repeated to anybody. So the Republican Party sending you today was probably the smartest decision they could have made, and this is why. Because I would not be so courteous to someone like the chairman of the Republican Party right now. It was right after I was raided. I got in trouble. Maybe just a couple months later or something. I saw you at Infusion Coffee Shop right outside of Naval Base. And you didn't have a look of pity in your eyes, and you didn't ignore so many people who I knew, just didn't know me anymore. When I left the Calvo administration, and then after I got in trouble or whatever. But you saw me at Infusion, and you came up and said hi. You asked, how's Dennis? How are you doing? And it was a very courteous conversation. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget the courtesy that you extended to me, and that even when I had no use to the business community anymore, since I had left the administration, that you were still so kind to me. So I wanted to tell that story.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. I do remember the moment, seeing you there, and I'll say a couple of things, and it's I'll go back to my father, and my father was a lifetime politician, like from high school all the way through, and when he was in university, he founded 3 newspapers and 2 radio stations, and the first TV show, news show that was ever done he used to tell me, founder of the Democratic Party of Puerto Rico, and helped found the Democratic Party in Guam, and personal friends with the Kennedy family, and it really affected him when both brothers were killed. But he used to tell me, Juan Carlos, if you ever decide to go in politics, there's some things that you should always remember. He says, first one is la política es ingrata. He said, politics is an ungrateful bride. It'll never. It's because of its nature. It has no memory. It always looking at what can you do for me today, and what can you do for me tomorrow, and unfortunately, that's a decision that drives an administration. I need the votes to win the election, and I might feel for you and I know you, but if I need this block of votes to get things done, that's where the politics will go. You say a true politician always have a memory, never forgets of the people that help you get there, and goes against that political motion. And that was the first thing he said. He said, you need to understand, politics will tell you this is what you should do for expediency. As a good politician, don't do it. Really realize that's where it's going, and remember the people that got you to where you are.
So basically, be a gentleman.
The second thing he said is always treat everybody the same way, because the world is round, and the person that's at the bottom today one day will be at the top, and the ones at the top will be at the bottom. So treat the people the way you feel about them and how you like them or you don't like them, regardless of their position. And it gets me in trouble once in a while. People remind me, you need to, that person's the governor. You should treat him with the title of the governor or with the respect they deserve. But I like treating the people the way that I feel about them, and I'll treat you the same when you're on top or when you're at the bottom.
And I know this to be true personally.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I hope it translates correctly in English. But it's a Spanish feeling.
We get it. We get it.
Don't forget where you came from, buddies.
Yeah.
We've totally been at the bottom.
Oh, I've been from. I can tell from my father at one point was probably one of the wealthiest families in Puerto Rico at one time. And he had a heart attack. I went to school, woke up the next morning at 13, and he had passed away by the time I came back from school. I didn't even know he was sick. It was literally what happened during the day. We would be like, you have this PIC clubs and everything, the club cards and memberships. We were honorary members in all the clubs. The day after, around a week after my father passed away, we went to the clubs. All our memberships have been canceled, all our relationships. And I've been from not knowing what I'm going to eat the next day to having all the choices in the world. So I realized that people tend to treat you differently, and I think I want to treat people the way they treat me and the relationship we end up having.
See, Juan Carlos, you're missing an opportunity to add a phrase after a comma in one of those sentences. And that's why I'm a Republican today.
Absolutely. And that's what drove me to the Republican Party today.
Yeah. So, all right, first question. I worked in the Calvo administration. You helped the Calvo and Camacho administrations through some stuff in D.C. and a lot of economic development stuff here, whatever. But this contrast is between the Calvo administration and today, basically the Leon Guerrero administration or the Democratic legislature or whatever. There, our reservations, of course, about the Calvo administration, but we've also had our reservations about the Leon Guerrero administration when it comes to a whole bunch of different things, both public and police corruption. So why don't you break it down for us? Are we better off today than we were 2 years ago?
Well, no.
Okay.
But there are a couple of caveats there. One is I don't think anybody could be doing good with the COVID.
Okay.
I think it's completely unexpected. No one could plan for it or look at it. And
but would Eddie Calvo have done a better job, do you think?
Absolutely. And it's surprising. One of my fights with I deal with a lot of private industry here, and a lot of the private industry in the last election voted for the Governor Leon Guerrero because of her business background.
Yes.
They said Bank of Guam is one of the most conservative banks that there has ever been. It runs its finances very well. Governor Leon Guerrero, that candidate Leon Guerrero, is somebody that we feel will run a conservative administration, will keep costs at a minimum. We had just gone through the issue of the first Trump tax cuts that had caused the 5% increase in GRT. So a lot of the private business felt that's a business-friendly conservative candidate that can run an administration and bring it to where we need to be. I disagree, but I think time has proven that this administration has not followed the same strategy that Bank of Guam has followed in keeping it going. Even before COVID, we were facing some serious shortfalls in finances. The increase in salaries to everybody across the administration was surprising. The reinstatement of the deputy directors in all the agencies and department was surprising.
The refusal to roll back the BPT.
The absolute refusal to roll back the business privilege tax was something that was unexpected. And as you started looking at it, it looked more like a traditional democratic spend administration that what the locals were expecting about a more conservative business, tight-run business facility. So are we a better up? No, we were facing an increase in crimes. We're facing an increase in drug use. I don't know if you guys remember, but one of the things that Corona maybe has done in a good way is you don't hear anymore about the woman getting beat up at the beach by the young kids. You don't have the machete welding guys running on the streets.
But it's still happening at home. Now it's happening in the house.
Yes, that is absolutely concern. Is now the administration, the Leon Guerrero administration, had sort of promised to increase the police and look at increasing safety. But through the period that we were facing, we didn't see any change in that arena. If anything, it got worse. I was concerned about the fact that they were trying to comply by saying, we're increasing the number of officers individually, but they were trying to lower the standard. And for me, I don't want more people on the street if they don't know what they're doing. That's already creating a mess in some of the states in the United States. What we want is a very well-educated, well-sound police force that has the authority in the backing of the governor to actually do what needs to be done.
So I cannot disagree with you that that generally, or based on actually a bunch of factors, that Eddie Calvo was a better administrator and a better manager than Leon Guerrero is. I can't disagree there. I cannot disagree that Eddie Calvo would have done a better job in handling the coronavirus situation and actually having a strategy moving for there. By 3 months ago, Eddie Calvo would have had a strategy to move forward. That's just the kind of manager that he was. But as you know, that we have our concerns about the corruption that occurred in the Calvo administration. Of course, you have concerns about corruption occurring in the Leon Guerrero administration. I was once a Republican for a long, long time. I was secretary of the party. I was an officer just like you are in the Republican Party.
May I interject? I think you're not going back further enough.
Oh, yes.
So guess what, Kandit Land? I've known this guy since we were teenagers, and you know how I met Troy? He was the chairman of the Young Republicans.
Oh, wow.
At the age of 15.
Yeah.
And I was the Speaker of the Youth Congress, first Republican.
Mm-hmm.
So we, when we were kids, we hung out at Speaker. Well, he wasn't even Speaker then. He was a minority leader, Tony and Pinko.
Yeah. Yeah. I was Denania for change. And today is Tommy Tanaka's birthday, by the way. Happy 80th birthday to Senator Tommy Tanaka. Yeah, and so I changed my party affiliation because of basically what happened with me in the Calvo administration. And I knew for years about all this stuff happening, but it took a wake-up call for me, and I changed it, and I'm a registered Democrat as of 2018. But I'm not happy with the Democratic Party either because of the last 2 years. There's been a Democrat legislature, and this Democrat governor has been a complete disappointment. And she has her own questionable practices and her run-in with corruption. So Juan Carlos, all things considered, right? And considering that there are some candidates on your slate right now that ally with former Governor Eddie Calvo, but the majority of them don't. What can you tell me? What can you say to convince someone like me that voting for a Republican majority of senators and mayors on this island is the right thing to do? That you guys are the ones that are going to rid us of corruption and address crimes against women and children, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I would say that there is a real need for a check and balance of what's happening in the administration, and a diverse voice. No one's always right. We're not going to do it correctly all the time, but the lack of that second voice, this legislature, when I look at the biggest disappointment for me, it's been, how many days did it take them to do the first meeting after Corona hit? And then
it took them quite a while.
When they finally come in and do an emergency meeting, they don't even pass a single piece of legislation, not a single bill or anything.
Correct.
Then they recess again. And when you start asking, what are we waiting for? We're waiting for direction from Adelu. and I'm going, but that's not your role.
That was a big problem.
There's a separation of power. You guys should be looking, what is this administration doing to address what the crisis we're facing and bring the problems that the community is bringing to you. That role of that senator is to be a conduit for the citizen, for those voters that voted for him, with the administration to say, we have a problem, you need to move on it. And if you're unwilling to do it, the legislature is going to act and implement and force you to address the concern of the issue of the people. But that's not going on. And the reality is there's not a single measure, well, let me not say that anymore. Outside of the measures that Jim Moylan has been advocating in a bipartisan manner, of increasing the Dave Santos Act, right, that passed. And then they did this loan program that sort of didn't work for the $10 million that they were going to help the people that earn less than $10,000 with some funding. Every single other action has been taken by the Trump administration. And we've been successful with a limited number of senators to go in and send letters to the White House and to the administration and say, please make sure that you keep us in all the pieces of legislation. Congressman Senator Nicholas has been very successful on the Democratic side to keep us in. So working both sides, we've been able to achieve inclusion at the federal level.
The Republican Party of Guam and Congressman Senator Nicholas, a Democrat, they have worked very well together over the past year and a half. That's an undisputed fact in getting things done especially in the Senate, right?
Yes.
Is where Congressman Nicholas needed help from the Republican Party of Guam, and you guys answered that call. And I think the war claims generation, has a lot to thank the Republican Party of Guam for in letting things flow smoothly through the Senate, but locally, and if there's the 36th Guam legislature Republican majority.
I think what's kind of funny though is traditionally federal issues at the political level here in Guam has never really been a big partisan thing. I mean, self-determination
until recently.
Yeah, which is kind of strange to me. I mean, us growing up, we saw both parties.
Team Guam. It was Team Guam.
It was always Team Guam.
Yeah.
If we wanted more money from the federal government, if we wanted whatever the case may be, there was always a unified voice.
Yes.
And so I can't recall a time, at least within the last 20, 30 years, where there's this division on federal issues. And to be quite frank, I think it's kind of scary.
Yeah. So you mentioned at the beginning Speaker Umpinko. That was the first speaker I ever met. And he came to D.C., and with him was Kaleo Moylan. But there was a Democratic minority leader. Used to be a bodybuilder. It's
BJ Cruz. Oh no, this was prior. This is prior.
Yeah, BJ was in the court already. He opposed the incinerator for years and years.
Ben Pangilinan?
Ben Pangilinan.
Okay.
So Ben,
he was a bodybuilder?
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
So with Ben Pangilinan, and they were advocating for help for Guam. And it was a bipartisan effort, and it went really well.
Yeah.
And it was surprising because you could tell that there was a willingness to try to do good for Guam. And they were disagreeing with the administration at the time, but they were trying to make sure that they presented a voice and another perspective.
Yeah, I remember when we were kids, they would send the delegation for self-determination, and you had Republicans and Democrats, they would go to the hearings and they would sing the same tune.
Yeah. Yeah. Joe Latta, Carl Gutierrez. Yeah. They'd all be at the table.
Yeah. And right now it's sort of weird. We have most of the Democrats like to go to the UN, and more to DC, New York, than go to DC, and then they go to DC. They want to go to the Liberation Day celebration, and it's like, how about going to DC to actually meet with the new administration, the campaign that are going on, members of the House and the Senate. It would be great if there was a really united voice on our issues. And unfortunately, the few times that they've gone, they sort of created more confusion than anything.
And I guess that's the danger, is that it's the importance of messaging when you have you have differing views being registered to federal officials.
Yeah. Well, here's where it's so sad. We're all pushing for the same thing, but because people want to make a to say it was me, and that's what's been very different for me in this administration, in this time than in other times.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. San Nicolas has in this bill 75%. He passed through the House 75% EITC, right? Earned income tax credit.
Big deal.
Huge deal. $60 million a year in that. I would have expected everybody who's on the bandwagon to support this. Right?
The governor has not sent a single letter.
She sent a letter, but she's asking for 100%.
Yeah.
And then there's a feeling of, well, we're supporting San Nicolas, we're just asking for more. And I try to say, the easiest thing to do in DC is to do nothing, is to have no change. The only time that there's a willingness to do something is when there's unanimity of thought, and two, there is very clear cost analysis versus of doing nothing versus doing something. So there is a value to the voice to say it's time for change. We don't want to deal with this waiting anymore. This is wrong. And but if you don't have everybody on the same page, then the probability is the issue will fail. So even though locally there's a perception by this administration that they supported the congressman by submitting this letter at 100%. I can tell you there's not, because I got a call from the administration saying, well, here's this position and here's this position.
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone's going to be fooled. The administration actively works against Congressman Nicholas for whatever reason there is, which is sad.
But let me tell you a couple of things to the senators. Okay, so under present law, we don't pick the party that anybody runs under. So the senators that run, when they file, they put their party affiliation.
And it's an open primary.
So then we go and we meet with them and introduce. I'm excited about the senators that are running right now, because a lot of them are very independent voices, and other voices that are coming back. I know that some of them might not be the favorite voices of everybody out there, but they're definitely they're going to be a voice. You're going to hear from them, and they're not going to be a rubber stamp of what the administration just wants to do. And I'm not saying that everything the administration wants to do is wrong. I think you just want to have that debate, an argument of, well, you're putting this budget of $1 billion for the first time for the administration, and then you're saying you're being thrifty. How can you be thrifty and give me the biggest budget in our history in the same breath?
Oh, well, actually, we're going to talk about that in just a second. Thriftiness, and especially when it comes to tax refunds. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, Juan Carlos, to hone in on that point you made about having a counterbalance, right? And no one here would disagree. There is always a need for that.
That's the way it's supposed to work.
But as I understand it, my grandfather was one of the territorials, the forebearers of the Republican Party. And as I understand the history of the Republican Party, is that for the longest time you had the power of one party for decades after decades. And it took people like Carlos Taitano and a bunch of other people to say, look, enough is enough, because one-party system is basically tyranny. So they founded the territorials, which eventually became the Republicans, which the Republican Party has traditionally been the opposition party to present a viable alternative to I guess in those days, a ruling class. And in being that, in order to be successful, it had to pick the strongest candidates.
Yes.
And when I was working at the legislature, I worked for Casper Bar, and Troy was working for, I think, Carlotta, like years ago. In those days, you had people like John Solis, well-educated, background in tourism and so forth. You had Mark Forbes, but you also had doctors, you had businessmen, you had accountants, you had people with advanced degrees and so forth. And this is, and I don't mean to put you in the spot, but it just, what happened? I mean,
it definitely was a smarter legislature back then.
You had the Republican Party in those days was a powerhouse of intellectuals and just really strong professional candidates. So it's kind of, and I'm not to say it's just the Republican, but maybe it's also both parties. I don't know what's going on, but we just don't see those kinds of people anymore.
Do you have stronger new candidates this time? Or do you feel confident in your new candidates?
I do. I do. I think J.I. Cruz will be interesting.
You will never ever convince me to do
that. I think that Ken Leon Guerrero, his decision to choose our party as his banner was very much welcome. I like his independent voice. It'll be interesting to see him coming on. Sandra Soos, has a strong background, pro-life advocate, and it comes with really good issues. Michelle Armenta, and her defense of women's rights and similar issues is.
I actually have been trying to get a hold of her to get her on our show.
Can you ask her? Can you send a message?
I sent a message.
Because we're very interested in getting her message out.
You know,
She seems very interesting.
Funny as it sounds, like people get intimidated to come to your show.
I think it's just because they're afraid to debate Troy, or Troy's gonna, go in at them.
Well, I mean, like I said, Juan Carlos, the smartest thing the party could have done was send you instead of Tony Ada to talk, because we would have some choice questions for Tony Ada.
Well, just to put it out there, Tony Ada is married to my mom's sister.
Yes.
So yeah.
Oh, I love Tony. I think he's a wonderful individual. He's a great chairman of the party. I think he's going to be a wonderful and great addition to the next Senate. I know that we all have our own personal positions and issues, but I could not be more excited. He's always, as you say, at least in my experience, when I've been when an administration's not been happy with me, or when an administration's been or when I've been in the high, he treats me the same way. He's always this caring. And his wife, you got to admit, his wife's amazing.
I love her.
You get you get 2 for 1 there. You get 2 for 1. She runs his schedule.
And Troy, he always answers you.
That's
Tony
true.
always answers you.
That's true.
He doesn't ignore you or hang up on you.
She's like a great scheduler. Like she's like, it's like, these are the things and this is what we promised. You understand?
but the choice questions I would have for Tony had nothing to do with him and everything to do with the party that he was a part of at a time. It had something to do with Larry Rupley. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I don't know Larry, so I can't.
Yeah, no, I know. So we can't ask you the question. So, but it does involve the Republican Party. Anyway, so there is a big news out of Washington, D.C. today that Congressman Mike Nicholas and you provided to Kandit. And I mean, where do you even start? So apparently, starting in September, the president has ordered that we not pay taxes, and we can get into more details. And the president has ordered the use of the disaster relief fund to pay $300 every week to those who are qualified for unemployment and similar programs through December 6th. This is every week.
Yes.
That would be on top of $100 that would come from states and territories that participate. So it's $400 per week to each eligible person. The governor of Guam and the governor of the CNMI have to apply to participate in the program and have to commit to a $100 local match to the $300 federal match, right?
$400.
Yeah, no, but together $400.
Plus the $348 that the unemployment program that he has till December already established.
Yes.
So it's gonna bring it's gonna take it down from the $940
to about $740
to $746, which still an amazing amount of funds. The new requirement is that they're authorizing the local governments to use some of their pandemic relief funding to match the funds. So I'll give you something technical. Everybody have been seeing the news, the TV, and the Democrats saying in Congress, he doesn't have the authority to do this. Well, he found a way to do it.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify this because I've been seeing some of the comments that that the president does not have the authority to spend this money without. And I want to clarify that. No, as a matter of fact, the authority the president does have is to spend. The authority that Congress has is to authorize the spending. What the president has done is he's taken a fund that Congress has already authorized and he's going to spend from it. So that's how the separation of powers works. And so this is a major coup d'etat, political coup d'etat that the president has just pulled on, because the Democrats have been beating up on him for appearing to not be concerned about the poor and the middle class who've been most affected by this economic recession, right? And so they couldn't agree in Congress on what to do. So the president just said, we're going to do it, and apparently it's being implemented now, right?
So he gave the funding through FEMA. So under the disaster declaration, he basically did a new disaster declaration for the pandemic, and under a 25% match, which under normal storms, when we get a typhoon, that's the original match. Normally it's 75, 25, 25 local, 75 federal.
Yes.
He said, I'm saying that this is actually so bad, I'm authorizing for $400 to be given to every unemployed individual in the United States, and he specifically includes the territory in the executive order.
And D.C.
And D.C.
Yeah.
And to qualify. So then you go, well, what's going to happen because the Congress is unwilling to give the whole $400? Where's this additional $100 coming from? And then he says, I'm authorizing now for you to use the money I gave you on the pandemic relief funding, which Guam we know has around $70 million left. On unused. You can use that money to do the match. So you don't even worry about spending your own state funds. I'm going to get the other funds I gave you, use that to match it. And you should be enough.
It's a double coup then for every state that has a gubernatorial election this year.
Yes.
It's a double coup. So it's a coup for his own election. And then he gets to put every single blue state Republican in check.
Yes.
You better either you agree with my program and you flow through this Trump relief program, or you're going to look bad to your voters.
So my expectation is some Democratic governors are going to say, well, I was planning to use that money for something else, maybe a new
for
hospital.
laptop bags.
Yeah,
for Gucci laptop bags. Yeah.
So I was planning to use that money for something else. But now then he said, well, then you can use other state funds. Now it's interesting because now the legislature could say, hey, well then in this new budget, let's segregate some money to make sure you fund that. If the governor doesn't want to use the federal funds that she's already been provided, but that is going to be interesting to see on the Democratic governors. My expectation is everybody's going to provide the money. So it'll be. He gave.
They would be crazy.
Yeah.
Nuts.
So he states in the executive order, if I'm not wrong, that there's around $88 billion left on that in that fund. He said, we'll do that until there's only $25 billion left in the fund. And at that point, then we'll revisit and look at where we are.
I know we don't like to talk about national politics on this show, but tell me, what do you think he'll get the popular vote? Or it'll just be a repeat of the last time he got?
Before pandemic, I think he would have won by a complete landslide across the entire United States. The economy was doing great. Unemployment was at record levels, but particularly for minorities. African American unemployment rate was the lowest ever since been recorded. Hispanic unemployment level was at the lowest level ever. Asian Pacific Islander was not. We were at a historic level, but not at the lowest. Only 40 years since we had been at that rate. Now, it's going to be very, very interesting how he's been demonized on his spending and his caring of the people. This Black Lives Matter movement has taken its toll. I still think he's going to win. It'll be a closer election. If you ever talk to Trump, he's more of how do you close the deal, right?
Have you spoken with him personally?
Yeah. And
is he like
extremely charismatic? He shouted. He called out Guam, and we did an event. We went to an event in Mar-a-Lago, and we have some of the strongest Trump supporters in Guam. Maybe 12 of us went into the event, and we each of us got a chance to take a picture with the president. And when you meet with him, he sort of like saying like, "Oh, this is great." He's kind of like, "Wow, Guam's in the house today."
Did you go to any of the conventions?
I went to the Bush re-election convention. Oh, it was like a rock star event. It was in New York City. It was in Manhattan. There's another story I just remembered about Juan Carlos.
Yeah.
You were with Trump from the very beginning.
I was.
And you were trying to convince Governor Eddie Calvo to get on the Trump train.
Oh, was it
and Governor
Ted
Eddie
Cruz,
Calvo made the
right?
stupid decision to go with Ted Cruz because of Arthur Clarke. because Arthur was like, we gotta go with Ted Cruz, and Eddie Calvo was like, I don't know. It looks like Trump is gonna win this thing. And Arthur was like, no, it's gonna be Ted. Everyone's saying it's gonna be Ted.
That election, I thought Trump was gonna take
and
it.
And Juan Carlos Benitez, he was the one making the push. He was like, you gotta jump on the Trump train. Look, the scene of my governor already jumped on. Come on. Yeah. And then Ted Cruz loses, and Eddie Calvo had to put his head
he's turned around. He's a very good Trump supporter right now. Trump appointed him and Governor Felix Camacho to be co-chairs for Guam. So they're the two co-chairs for Guam. It's Governor Calvo and Governor Camacho. Governor Calvo is now in the API advisory board with Doris Brooks. First time we ever get two members of that board from Guam. It's interesting. Trump has I was going on this story. We all met with him for the photo, but then after the photo, there's a big gathering. I would say maybe 20,000 people in this beautiful ballroom at Mar-a-Lago. It was really nice. And he shouted out to Guam. He ended up in the middle of that saying, the defense of the United States starts in Guam, and there's no media. It's a close event, and I gotta say I'm touched that there's a large delegation. Can you guys just stand up, and all of us here should clap for this group? And it was touching and amazing. And when it finished, he got out of the stage, came over to me, and gave me a big hug, and it was a touching moment for me to see a sitting president that actually cares about what's going here. Because I was really disillusioned with Obama. I didn't like him to start, but the one silver lining for me was, well, he's from Hawaii. He's going to understand the issues that relate to Guam. And it never translates. Even the other day, he called for statehood. He called for the right to vote for Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. And then he goes, Puerto Rico and District of Columbia should be given the right to vote. And I went like, what happened to Guam, Northern Mariana Islands, and American Samoa? He didn't mention us at all. And I thought the governor, this legislature would send a note, at least, the federal Democrats, and say, hey, why are you not supporting us and our right to vote?
No, you're right. I remember when President Obama was the president, there was great hope that he would be the president for the territories because, he understood as much as one could hope for because he was from Hawaii that. Well, he said he understood issues, but then when it came to it,
but to his credit,
there was actually some pushback.
To his credit, this buildup was really is a part of his policy, right?
No
pivot.
No, this was Bush. This was
Bush. 43.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
It was Bush.
Yeah, Bush 43. I was in D.C. I still remember when we started on it.
Yeah.
For me, one of the things is Obama became president for 8 years.
Yeah.
How many times did he come and land in Guam and met with people as a sitting president?
Well, to be fair, Trump hasn't come, but are you going to invite him?
Trump did come and met with Eddie Calvo. Do you remember? He actually...
When he was the president?
Yes.
Yeah, they took a picture on the plane, Troy. We were too busy lost in
maybe I was high at the time.
We were too busy.
He went to Here's for me sort of funny story. I get a call from the White House and says the president is going to meet with Kim Jong in Korea, and after their meeting, there are 3 flight plans on the way back. One flight plan has him stopping in Guam. We're not going to know until which flight plan they take until they finish because it depends on the time that the meeting ends and how things end, and. So I'd say I'm alerting everybody. Governor Torres was also, he's been a big, he was the first governor to endorse President Trump as a candidate. And I'm like, okay. So I go to sleep and I'm going to Saipan the next morning. So I land in Saipan and my phone rings, 8 a.m. And it's the White House. They're saying the president has picked, when he landed, he's picked to go through Guam. Just want you to know, we'll let you know when the meeting ends and be aware for it. But we are estimating it's going to be at the earliest 11 p.m. We're going to be in Guam. And I'm like, that's great, except there's only one flight from Saipan to Guam, and it's in the morning. so I started, both me and Governor Torres, we started trying to figure out ways around, and Admiral Chatfield was the admiral at the time. So after a lot of clearance, we were given clearance to go to Anderson, and Admiral Chatfield calls me around maybe midnight and says, I got two news. You guys have been cleared by Secret Service to come, both me and Governor Torres, to come. Bad news is what I have are helicopters. And by the time they go to Saipan and pick the governor and you will miss the drop off because because it takes 45 minutes each way and we need to refuel. So it was like an hour and 45 minutes, and they were arriving in like 30 minutes from that moment. So we were unable to attend, which was a pity. I would have loved to have been there and received the president, but I have to say, the lieutenant governor didn't show up to that meeting, and it was because people had said, the chief of staff had said, Trump was so exhausted by the time that he finished the meeting with Kim Jong. He hadn't slept in like 18 hours. So he landed on the plane and fell asleep on Air Force One. And the chief of staff said, don't bother him, let him sleep. He's just going to make it. But, no disrespect, is just understand what's going on. And I was like, from the folks that I knew with Trump, I'm like, Trump's no way he's coming to Guam and not meet. Then he would skip Guam. So around an hour before they landed, Trump shows up out of his room, like wearing his suit and going like, and he's like, where's my briefing booth on the governor and where are we going to meet and where things are happening? And the staff is rolling out, trying to wake up. Thank God Margaret had the personal cell phone and number for Governor Calvo. So she was able to wake up Governor Calvo and tell him, you need to get running and make it to Anderson because it's landing.
I could see that traffic happening, right? That phone call and Eddie Calvo flipping out and hitting like, Christine, I gotta go. And then he rushes out.
And, but he made it. Unfortunately, we couldn't get anybody at the lieutenant governor's house to answer the phone.
I guess he was at a block party or something.
I think he was a deep sleeper, and so
on his election chances, do you think that Black Lives Matter has hurt him significantly?
I think that the way media portrayed how everything went in has hurt him. Not enough. He still will win. I feel he's going to win re-election. But his ability to do the rallies and the concern about people that was his way of messaging the grassroots and the community, and those have been limited to a certain degree. But I'll give you an example. When the death of George Floyd occurred, the president was the first one to come out and say, this is wrong. This shouldn't have happened.
He said it was murder.
Yes, and he said, I want to see if we can make a federal matter out of this, because what people don't understand in the way this rhetoric has been going is the mayors and the governors are the ones who police those police departments. They're not controlled by the federal oversight. Those are state matters. The same here with the police department of Guam, right? Who determines the type of oversight and discipline that officers get when they exceed their power and their authority is determined by the legislature and the governor. In New York, in the cities, the mayor decides how that police acts or interacts.
I hate to change subjects, Troy, but this, even some of your viewers have very strong comments about Black Lives Matters, and I understand the underpinning, the arguments that these people have made, but on Guam, it's kind of like a different situation for us. I mean, we are not a minority, so we can't really relate to that. But that you still have, when people were protesting here, it kind of like, I don't have a problem with that, but think about it. We have a whole race of people or a whole ethnic ethnic group, the Micronesians, the FAS people here, and we all know how they're treated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so funny how people would come out so strong for the rights of minorities in the country and turn a blind eye to what we see here happening every day.
We've discussed that a
agree.
few times.
So-
here.
I agree.
Yeah.
So let me. I know I get demonized with some of my positions, so I'm fine with it. I sort of learned to live with it. I have a wonderful wife that accepts me even with those, and my 2 children, because their unconditional love is always one and important. But I want to. I'm a civil rights advocate. I've been an advocate for minorities all my life. As we were talking about, the reason that I ran that National Origin Working Group at Department of Justice was because of my background on what I do and how I do. I'll give you an anecdote, which is a true live anecdote. There's a Puerto Rican judge who, during the Bush administration, was going to be appointed, and this is 41, was going to be appointed the first Hispanic Supreme Court justice.
Is this the
in
same
States.
guy that wrote a lot about territorial self-determination issues?
No, he's Puerto Rican.
Oh.
This one, let's just say he was not Mexican.
Okay.
And he, on the Republican side, he was told, come to Washington, bring your family. We're going to go in and you're going to be appointed tomorrow morning. The president's going to announce you as the next Supreme Court justice. That night, National Council of La Raza, which was the preeminent Mexican American organization, Dolores Huerta, who was their big champion, called the White House and say, if you nominate him, I'm going to oppose. And my group is going to oppose. And the next day, it was really sad because that guy was with his family sitting in a hotel room when they announced Clarence Thomas to be the next Supreme Court of the United States.
So
That
they pulled down
decision
their
was,
own guy.
they pulled down the opportunity to have the first Hispanic in the Supreme Court. I went to a meeting of the Hispanic National Bar Association the next day because we had an agreement on 7 names that if any of those 7 names were nominated, the entire Hispanic community of all the national organizations, we were all supporting whoever was on that 7 name list. He was one of the names. And Dolores Huerta stood up in that room when we were all trying to figure out what had happened and said, over my dead body, anybody but a Mexican, because you guys have not suffered what we had suffered inside the United States. And it fractured the unity. And it took us all the way until Sotomayor came along to be able to reunite that package. So I hear the pain, I hear the concern. The African American community has suffered a lot, and there's a lot that we all need to support and work together with. But that shouldn't be done at the detriment or by discriminating against other minorities. And that's my concern with the cry. When people tell me, well, we're protesting on Black Lives Matter, and say, what's the action that you're trying to achieve? I tell people, what's the goal? You know, if we're going to do a Black Lives Matters event, okay, or a George Floyd event, sympathy event here, what's the purpose? It's not that the guy gets convicted in Minneapolis. That's happening in Minneapolis. It's an issue that's going to happen there. But there is a reason to do the event here, and it's to address the discriminations that are suffered in Guam by other minorities. And we should say the same way that it was wrong what happened to George Floyd over there, it is the same way that it is wrong here in Guam for discrimination to happen here to all these minorities. And it might be that there is a case of saying, including African Americans in Guam that are being discriminated. I have to say the African American community here is very small, and I'm sure that they're suffering, but what is really blatant and obvious to everybody here is the Micronesians and the discrimination that's going against them.
So let me ask you, Juan Carlos, what can a Republican majority or even a Republican minority of senators in the next legislature due to, this is a two-pronged question. One, address the issue of police corruption, because that's one of the aims of the whole Black Lives Matter thing, right?
Right.
There's police corruption.
Right.
And secondly, to improve the economic condition of our Chukis brothers and sisters.
Okay, so I'll go by parts. On the police issue, I think we need a legislature that focuses again on this issue. That our police department needs to be strengthened, and our crime is a bigger issue here than everybody is trying to portray. The influx of illegal drugs into this island and the impact of the groups that are distributing those are concerning and growing. I think we would advocate for Guam becoming a HIDA, a high-intensity drug trafficking area, along with the Northern Mariana Islands. I think we need people that have experience, having served in the police department before, and understands the shortcoming of the departments to try to figure out how we monitor and control that better. I think we need to increase and raise the standards of what we require police officers to do. We need to bring back those mental tests that were being done to make sure that people we're putting there are qualified, and also the background check, so that we don't end up recruiting people into the police force that maybe are part of the problem that we're facing right now.
There are people already on the police force who are part of the problem.
Yes.
And I would also, we're not going to have the argument, but I would argue one of them running for senator on the Republican side. But is there a desire by your candidates to conduct greater oversight? Not one oversight hearing has been conducted in the 35th Guam legislature over the Guam Police Department. That's concerning in itself. Do your Republican candidates want to have greater oversight when issues like this, because the police corruption has become an issue over the past year?
As you have seen already, Jim Moylan had done a number of meetings across the island to discuss increasing crime and concerns with the police department and their ability to actually perform the duties that are needed to be performed in those particular townships, and villages. So I can guarantee you that if we're in the majority, we would even, one of our first hearings and one of the committees that would be extremely active would be to look at law enforcement and what do we need to do to strengthen the fair and even-handed use of police force in here in Guam. Because we need a strong police department. That's a reality of what we're facing. The concerns is that we also don't want a police department that doesn't have an oversight or a correct oversight to make sure that they don't exceed the powers that they need.
Speaking to that point, it all goes back to transparency, and the legislature has an important role to play when it comes to holding the police department accountable.
And it has failed at that role over the past year and a half.
And when you look at a governor, what the time that they need to be spent, they need to focus to make sure that they get the right people appointed and elected to those positions. But they're not going to really be able to focus too much time on anything, a lot more what's going on in that department at the deep side. That's left to the legislature, who should be looking at it and saying, wait a second, this department is not up to par, and the people that you're appointing are people that we don't consider that measure up to what they need to do to be able to run it. I'm also concerned that with customs, there's a couple of issues. I do want to say, I really think that we should look back at Graven Department of Agriculture, custom oversight over all the insects and issues that are coming here, because the amount of invasive species that we've been seeing coming into this island is growing rampant.
Sleeping on the job.
And
somebody is sleeping on the job.
And I think it goes back to the point when, on what I call the funding gap, they united both functions into one department.
We've spent upwards of about $500,000 a year for probably 5 years straight in a row on rhino beetle.
Yeah.
And what do we have to show for that? Nothing.
Oh, I tell you what we have to. I tell you what we have to show. the great banded hornet, the red ant coming in,
fire
ants. Yeah, you know, it is not improving. If anything, it's getting worse. And
Man, you guys are freaking me out. This is like something out of a nightmare movie for me. Talking about insect growth on this island. It freaks me out.
But you know, it was working fine when the Department of Agriculture was taking care of it, because the people that are in that department, they care about that, right?
So they're gonna. I guess it's because when they put them at the, you know, with the focus of law enforcement was drug interdiction. Or drug
weapons, you know.
That's what they're trained on. They're not trained on the agriculture part of it. So
to your point, yeah, it probably would have been a better idea to keep them with Department of Agriculture, working with the wildlife biologists and the agricultural people. And we spent when I was working in the legislature, and we'd go through those budgets. $500,000 to UOG.
But
many years.
But for me, the main issue, if you get a Republican legislature, is we care about people keeping their jobs. There's been a lot of focus about unemployment and what to do once you're unemployed. And for me, is why are we not discussing how do we make sure that you don't lose that job to start with? And how can we incentivize the companies to keep you employed and work with you? And we have some limits, but there's things we can do. I think we need to roll back the GRT.
Will you guys do that? Will a Republican majority roll back the BPT?
Yes.
Okay. But and I got to be critical here because so you have Chris Duenas, who is Ken calls him a recycled candidate, right? Mm-hmm. And you have Tony Ada, who was not a senator at the time that the BPT was increased, but advocated for it from Adaloop. He was the legislative liaison. Then you have Joanne and J.I. All four of them running for senator were advocates of the, albeit temporary, increase of the BPT, right? In 2018 is when this happened. Right. Are they going to do an about face and support the rollback of the BPT?
Well, I wouldn't call it about face, because you need to understand when the original Trump tax cut came in, the first round of the tax cuts came in, President Trump, it was unexpected locally. They should have been, the administration should have been looking at it more carefully, but they were not. And I'll accept that criticism for a Republican administration. But when it came in, the very little options, they had a $60 million shortfall. They needed to figure out whether we're going to get that funding. So they increased the DRT, the BPT. The business community supported that increase because it was a limited period. It was, hey, we have this problem. The economy is going well.
Yeah, and everybody put their hand in. I want to help.
Can we all get together?
I gotta ask, okay? Because I understand the whole GRT, the reasons why they did increase it and stuff like that, and I like Jim Moreland. I like it when he talks about rolling back the GRT and so forth. But if the Republicans did take the majority, and they decided to roll back the GRT, are they going to make the kinds of decisions that they need to in order to sustain the government? Because that is a big chunk of change.
So let's go at the reality of what it is. It was interesting because there was an interview with Tony and a debate with Tony and Carlo Branch. And Carlo Branch said, "Where are you going to find the $60 million?" First thing, I think we can all agree, it's a 1% of revenues. It's not going to be anywhere near $60 million because everybody here has losses. Look at T Galleria right now. Look inside. If you're jogging down there, look inside.
Now that we've gone through this, the impact won't be as great.
Right. Okay. So the lowering of that 1% will really not be $60 million on the revenues that the government is collecting, because the revenues that the government is going to collect is not even nowhere near there.
Yeah. So you're saying that it's kind of a moot point because of COVID?
No, it's not a moot point. You need to do some adjusting. I think that the first thing, during the Cal administration, we had a 20% reduction of all classified employees, right?
No, that's what the Calvo administration said.
Yeah.
And I was the one saying it.
Yeah.
That's not entirely
so why don't we agree to a majority of the classified employees?
There was a reduction in. To be fair, in the Camacho and Calvo administrations, there absolutely was a reduction in force.
Yeah.
And Governor Calvo did try to reduce the force even more, but the legislature wouldn't let him.
Well, I remember some of my friends that complained where they lost, at least their personal salaries went down 20%.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about the voluntary cut in pay.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I took that voluntary cut in pay too, so I know the pain you're talking about.
So, and that was for a small damage, right? They increased it to 5%. They said the first thing we're going to do to make sure we start offsetting is 20% salary cuts for all classified employees, right? I think that this administration should look at least doing that. The salaries of most of the workforce, at least in Adelup, it's at the highest level I've ever seen it. But and here's the thing. When you start an administration, your salaries at the White House and at the governorship's administration are very low because they have 8 years. You know, they have the 4 years. They're going to hope they're going to win re-election. So you end up there's an opportunity to, as you approach the end of the administration, in order to keep your employees in, you slowly start ratcheting up those salaries because they know in a year and a half they need to find another job. Maybe a year I need to find another job. So because of that, salaries are high. The beginning of this administration, they took the salaries at the end of the last administration and then bumped it up. Which is crazy. When you have over 10 employees that are earning more than our governor, it is wild.
I think though.
Yeah, the lawyer, what's his name? And he doesn't even have a license.
You know what's interesting? Look at the White House. He was earning more than the general counsel for the president.
Get out of here.
I'm not kidding.
Are you serious?
I am serious.
And he doesn't even have a license.
He doesn't even have a full license to practice law.
But he wasn't the only one. Just look at the salaries, compare it. And for me, it's sort of weird to say the governor who oversees the entire island of Guam deserves a lower salary than the people that respond to her, right? That's sort of weird to look at.
And they're all taking hits.
But that debate has been, we've been through that debate for several years about the whole salaries of the politicians and so forth.
So if you ask me, what would happen under a Republican legislature? I think salaries should be commensurable to your experience and knowledge. There should be a cap on salary. I don't think anybody here in Guam should be earning more than $100,000. That's my own personal point of view. If you're going to be in the port, for example, that they're at $166,000 and 990 change, and they throw this Hague study at me. I would say, if you look at the Hague study, is based on the qualification of an individual to run that office. If you have those qualifications, if you have 20 years of experience in running a port facility to make it to port manager, absolutely, let me pay you that. But if you have no experience in running a port facility, or your last salary was $70,000 and now I'm going to raise you, I'm going to double your salary, it doesn't make sense to me. That's a fair use of funding.
I understand your point there, but the port and the operation or the funding for the port and the funding that the BPT goes to, the two separate pots.
Absolutely, but when you're asking me what are the measures that that I would recommend we start taking to do savings so that we can get us to the level we are to do, part of it is going to be looking at all salaries for all classified employees and saying they need to be commensurable to the experience and the qualification of the individuals that are taking over.
Okay.
You know, I can understand somebody telling me he just graduated from college and he went to Harvard or Notre Dame, or it's there's value to that. I also value somebody that has 10, 20 years of experience on doing a specific type of jobs. But don't tell me that I need to value an individual that just graduated from college and pay him the same salary that I was paying somebody that had 30 years of experience just because it's the same position. It should not be.
I still think that the point has to be made that historically, when times are tough, when it really came down to the government having to be forced, like, at the last minute, they would have to really cut.
Yeah.
It's always been a blame game. The legislature would usually traditionally take the position, that's not our problem, that's the governor, right? You know that. It's always been the case. So I guess it really boils down to the kind of people that are going to be going in there.
I'll throw you a bone, Juan Carlos. I'm going to throw you a bone, and it's something people wouldn't expect me to do, because it would be saying something nice about Eddie Cabo. The only time in Guam's government history that I can remember a governor going in and wanting to cut spending and then offering an actual plan to cut spending that was against his political whatever was in 2012. And the Democrat legislature was the one that did tell him to go take a hike. But there was actually a plan to cut. It was some like $44 million in annual spending that he wanted to cut.
Yeah.
And the legislature told him, no, we're not going to authorize you to do that. It requires legislative authorization. So I guess let me restructure the question. If the Leon Guerrero administration, if the legislature said we got to cut taxes, and then of course it goes back to the Leon Guerrero administration, because you said we were going to cut taxes, we don't have this revenue anymore, we need to cut spending. Legislature, you need to authorize us to do these things so that we can cut the spending. Are your Republican senators going to actually allow the authorization to cut spending?
I'm sure we are, but we want to look at the plan and look at what they're submitting.
That might mean the end of certain contracts. It might mean a reduction in contractual costs. It might mean a reduction in force. It might,
and it probably will. But for me, they try to say, oh, you're trying to get rid of government jobs. You're going to fire all these people. And the administration said, oh, we're going to work it on attrition. We're just not filling the vacancies. I'm not looking at the low-paying wages. I think those people, by God, line workers in Guam are amazing. So I give them that, and I honor that. You look at the hospital, the nurses here, they're some of the best I've ever seen. But in top management, I think you should look at defunding again the deputy directors. I think we should limit the amount of deputy directors that could be even in an agency. If you have, why do you need 2 or 3 individuals to be doing the deputy spots?
We just got a deputy next door, right?
Mm-hmm. So
our next door neighbor has a deputy.
I think you might want to look at merging some of the agencies together, not on the line working, but on the top management. Because those are huge savings. And you look in the Northern Mariana Islands, right, next door. Now, you don't have to go way too far.
They furloughed.
But not only that, the port and the airport.
The Commonwealth Ports Authority.
Commonwealth Port Authority. One authority overseeing the two facilities. Why can't we do that? If we're really looking at it, we wanted somebody just to really, really, really focus on the airport. Rory had time enough to go the other days and do 4 hours in the morning show to take vacation for it, right? Because to cover that at K57.
We are always we are going to be pro Rory, especially in comparison to Joanne.
Yeah. So if he has that much time, maybe what we need to really look.
He has that much time because he has a surplus in their finances over there.
They do, Juan Carlos. They did.
Joanne left it in a deficit.
She left it in a deficit. That's what the audit shows, and he turned it into a surplus just last year.
Well, I have not seen those books.
I promise you.
I would love to look at those numbers.
It was just 100,000 in the red when Joanne left, and then I don't know what it surplus to. I think 800,000. It was a meager turnaround, but a turnaround nonetheless.
Was it like port fees?
It's just their total,
part of it is.
Or maybe it's that legal contracts.
Oh yeah, could have been a legal contract. Well, that guy was a Democrat.
I'll go by parts. Does that surplus take into account the ruling decisions or the decisions that they agreed to on the payment of all this?
Yes.
Because Rory started to count it, Joanne didn't. Yeah. But Rory began to count it, and even with those in there.
And then I'll go with are those based on the projections of containers coming on island because of the military buildup, which is it's still going on.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that right now, those numbers I would review yesterday, because the amount of container loads that are coming to Guam have diminished substantially based on this pandemic. Yes, the entire wholesale industry here has reduced their buying into Guam like you wouldn't believe, because you just lost 1.9 million tourists a year on a monthly basis on food and revenues. And if I could do something to advocate for the people, I want to say the focus on the Republicans, if we take over the legislature, is to maintain your job and keep your job alive. One way that everybody that's listening right now could help is go out to your local restaurant and do takeout. I'm not asking anybody to go in and stay in the restaurants, but they really need the money and the revenues. We need those waiters, those cooks, those individuals to be able to survive.
Well,
and
us here at Kandit order food all the time.
We're like McDonald's in 76 best friends.
You know, it's people have reserves and they try to work in the best scenario, but a lot of this mom and pop shops and the small businesses, those reserves might have been 2 weeks to a month. The PPP by President Trump might have helped some of them, but definitely not all of them. And I am just so sad because one of the things that they're talking about diversifying our economy. One of the areas that I thought Guam was shining, was starting to become a culinary destination, is we were making our mark with all our students at all these world competitions, winning, coming in first, second. And then it started to transform our restaurants. You had all this, you know, what is it? 9th Street Deli. You have Moses.
But the thing about
and now, you know, Kitchen Lingo was I consider it to be my favorite restaurant in Guam, and having to see it go down, it's heartbreaking to me. So that's why I encourage, let's not lose that part. The second part that is concerning, and people might not be noticing, is the amount of tourists that will be able to come to Guam will be less. Not because they don't want to come here, but because with the new distancing and the new reality that Corona is going to bring into our lives, that hotel that before could carry 600, 700 tourists are now only going to be able to carry 400 or 500 tourists. So then we need to look what the destination we're creating. And we had the infrastructure for a high-end destination. We had Tiffany's, we have Cartier, we have the Tea Galleria, we have all these things. So we get tourists that are willing to spend $500, $800 a day coming to our shore. And if we're going to have a smaller number, that's what we want to attract, is that high-end tourists. But we're starting to lose that infrastructure. What attracts them? Cartier close, Tiffany close. Tea Galleria is shut down at least till October of this year, but might be longer. But whatever we can do to keep the infrastructure that makes that industry stay alive, we need to do. That's going to be the legislature. That's when you talk about saying how can we keep those businesses alive and employing people. President Trump suggesting right now in this battle that there needs to be an incentive for reemployment of individuals. And that's he's trying to fight in this fight with the Democratic Congress on trying to insert there. Instead of just giving them money for not working, why don't we give that money if they're brought back into the workforce? Even though we realize that today that business will not have a necessity to keep that employee. But if we pick up that tab, then that's one more person that feels that's in the system. And when the tourists come back and when the economy starts revigorizing, we're not forcing that, we're not limited now by that employer having to find a new employee that is not trained or knows how to do that job.
Yeah, that's what I think a bunch of people who have been working and have considered themselves as the left behind and the forgotten during this whole thing. And there are a bunch of people on Guam where that's their story. But I don't want to leave this our and this has been a great conversation, by the way. And thank you for rolling with the punches about Joe Mann and J.I.
I'm going to vote for both of them. I think they're going to be an interesting voice.
No
in
one's
the legislature.
perfect. No one's perfect. Tax refunds is an issue, and
Yes.
you Republicans this should be one of your biggest trumpeting points. Is tax refunds have not been paid this late in nearly a decade.
Mm-hmm.
The last time tax refunds were paid out this late, the year was 2011. In the new budget that has been substituted by Senator Joe Augustine, Democrat, he is setting aside only $125 million in tax refunds, where just last year, $135 million was paid. The year before that, $137 million. The last time tax refunds were below $125 million was 2011. It's only gone up. And so he's only setting aside $125 million. He's also gotten rid of the rainy day fund, which is a 2% set aside, a reserve of appropriations. And that reserve, the legislature has said, needs to go to the payment of tax refunds. So for the past several years, that's always been the cushion to pay for tax refunds. This new budget it looks like there's not going to be enough set aside for tax refunds, and that's on top of we're already late. What are you guys going to do differently? I mean, that was an easy question, but
Well, what we're going to keep the government. We're going to keep the government to task, and we're going to question those numbers very strongly. I'm sure that Senator Telotay-Tagui is going to be on the legislature floor fighting this fight this coming week. But with a Republican majority, what you're going to be seeing is putting more to task the governor and the administration in their numbers and their expectations of what to do. My biggest issue is I think they still have a rosy scenario on their collections and on the tasks that they need to do. Hawaii is expecting $2 billion deficit in their budget. $2 billion deficit is their projections right now. Northern Mariana Islands cut their entire government by 50%, and they put sturdy measures to now there's no work on any Friday. There's 4-day work week is what they're facing. But they did it in a way that under these PUA and PUC, their workers who were displaced were getting $945 a week payments. So the government was saving the money.
They haven't received the payments yet.
So the local government was preserving their local funds.
Yes.
While using the pandemic funding.
It should have been done here.
To be done. That hasn't been done here, and the big problem that they're going to face is if there's a need to actually lay off workers because we haven't taken any of the measures that we feel should be taken to preserve their jobs, they're not going to have $940. They're not going to have $740 a week. They're going to be facing, at the very best, the $345 is what they're going to be getting while that program is in effect. And then they're going to have nothing. The local government's estimating right now there are over 30,000 people on unemployment rolls. Even if we establish a Gulf Guam run and operating unemployment services, what's the amount that you can collect from the local government, from the local businesses to subsidize that? You would be paying people maybe $100 a week. That's not surviving.
Yeah.
The easiest way to survive and keep is doing the drastic and necessary measures now
2 months ago
to maintain those businesses alive and paying those individuals a decent wage and a full-time. And it's going to be the best thing for Guam. And I can tell you, if we take over the legislature, our senators will make sure that we put the government to task and we take the measures that need to be taken to have everybody survive. this thing. And yeah, it'll be sad. Some of the contracts will be laid off. Some of the attorneys won't have this big multi-million-dollar bills. Some of the government employees that are earning over 6 figures might see their salaries cut to a more reasonable number. I would love for everybody to at least put a cap at the governor's salary. If the governor's earning $95,000 a year, that should be enough for anybody who's going to work for our government. And this double dipping salaries, like what they just did with the census, if you're earning more than $40,000 a year as a full-time employee in Gov Guam, and the administrator is going to let you, or your board director is going to let you have another job, there should be a measure of what the quality of the work that I'm getting. Because if you're getting $35,000 a job from a federal job plus $45,000 a job from a state job, something tells me you might not be producing the peak. You might not be fully engaged into your government job at this point, because there's only 24 hours in a day, and at some point you're sleeping.
Yeah. Well, there are some legal buildings we've seen that where they defy the laws of physics and time. Do you have any other questions for Juan Carlos? Shelly, do you have any other questions for Juan Carlos?
No, I don't.
No?
But I thought we were going to discuss the Mike Nicholas.
Oh, yes, that's right. Congressman Underwood's been running these ads about Congressman St. Nicholas's voting record. You know all about that stuff. What's going on there?
Well, first of all, I'm a Republican.
Yes.
So very proud of that. And during Republicans' administration, the territories do not have a vote on the floor.
Okay.
So the reason for that is because it's a fake vote. It means nothing, and I want to make sure that people understand that the same way that in a Guam ballot you'll have a vote for president and vice president of the United States.
Okay.
It has no actual impact on the general election itself.
Okay.
It's basically a symbolic vote so that we feel that we participated, and we do have a good track record in determining who wins at the end. In the congressional vote, the way the Democrats do the rule is the territories are given a vote as long as that vote doesn't give the victory to anybody.
Oh, so it's a meaningless vote.
It is a meaningless vote.
So this Underwood ad means absolutely nothing.
So let's say we have a bill that's going to create a part-time legislature.
Uh-huh.
And the bill votes and it wins by 4 votes, and it's 4 votes from the U.S. territories. The second any vote in Congress of the United States is less than 5 votes, the territorial votes are eliminated automatically.
So
and then that brings the number.
So it's just to make us feel better sometimes?
It's a way of figuring. I actually asked.
I didn't know that.
I actually asked Congressman Underwood when he was a congressman how he felt about it, because I was like, I think it's insulting, and he said, "Oh well, Juan Carlos, but at least people come to my office and ask me, all these PAC guys and private industry that they want to see their vote."
They want to see the number up
by a larger margin, so we add our numbers into it. And I'm like, but you realize that you're not counted. It doesn't count.
I had no idea.
And
so all of that's just baloney?
It means nothing. The only time that the vote of a territory is counted is in committee. And for that reason, the Republicans say, if we're going to give you a vote, we're going to give you a vote. And it needs to be counted. And if we're not giving you a vote, it should be, you should know that you're not getting a vote, and we should not make this fake.
We not should pretend. We shouldn't pretend.
Did you hear that, guys? This attack against Mike St. Nicholas is based on a bunch of nothing.
Yeah. So here's interesting. If you look at the voting records nationwide, you're going to see that all the territory delegates are towards the bottom. Not just St. Nicholas. I think St. Nicholas might be the lowest one of the territories, but normally they're all down there, because what we discovered when I was running the office for Puerto Rico is it's a perfect time to go to do a meeting with the administration, because none of the other members of the House are asking for a meeting. Because they all
Because
have to
they're
be in
all
the
at
vote
the
because
House.
their vote actually counts towards that
Okay.
issue. So,
So
we
basically,
would go.
Nicholas would be wasting his time if he can't. If
No,
he,
but he's not, because he's in the committees doing what needs to
no,
be
no, no,
done.
no. If he was in the House making that
Yeah.
floor vote, he would be wasting his
Yeah.
time.
Strategically, you would be saying, hey, how about meeting with me on Wednesday at 2 p.m.
At Interior
because
or
I know
something.
that there's a vote and no other member of Congress is going to ask for that meeting at that same time, so I can go over there. It makes it harder to say no.
Okay.
But we used it strategically for Puerto Rico, and I think the congressman at the time used to try to keep himself at around a 50% voting percentage because he said, well,
Just for the look of it?
just for the look of it. And every so often he likes to say to a friend, hey, I voted on your vote. You know, it's your bill passed and I was in it. I gave you part of the extra cushion. But everybody knew that their vote, his vote didn't count for purposes of actually getting the legislation passed. It was just like a little bit of extra finideni sauce, you know. It's like,
okay.
put it on
Okay,
top.
one more. Just your personal opinion on the MMMA.
MMA.
The Medical Malpractice Mandatory Arbitration Act.
Okay. I haven't studied it, so I wouldn't know what's I have to be honest about it. If I haven't really looked at it, I'm concerned about arbitration. There's we talked about procurement in Guam, and it's a big issue. There's a position advocated by John Brown, and where he stands, and he continues to believe that the Guam procurement laws do not allow for arbitration at all.
Oh.
And then he feels that the fact that we keep going to arbitration is an abdication of the authority to a third party. And under Guam procurement law, the procurement officer is required to make the final ruling and determination on all procurement issues that relates to that individual. So I defer to John Brown because he's a better attorney than I am, and I'm a good attorney, but I think he's better in this area of procurement. So you might want to ask him.
Well, the Republican candidates who we've interviewed already, except for one who doesn't have a position yet, have told us that they are in favor of the reform of the Medical Malpractice Mandatory Arbitration Act. Maybe as we interview more of them, hopefully all of them.
Yeah. If you send me
support its
information,
reform.
I'll read it.
Okay.
I have to admit,
It's a due process issue, actually.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. Can we ask a fun question?
I think I got two more.
Oh no, I
Oh
I
yeah,
wanna
go
ask,
ahead. Go ahead.
Sure.
Go ahead.
This is just a fun question. This has nothing to do with anything that counts toward the election. But if you were a betting man and you had to place your bet, you didn't have a choice, in a battle between, a fisticuffs battle between Vice Speaker Selena Nelson and Senator Tello Taitigui, who would you bet $50 on?
I would never bet against Tello Taitigui. I just want to say I would never bet against Tello Taitigui. She is definitely a fighter.
All right.
Fighter.
Well, fair enough. Very partisan of you, but fair enough.
If you want to beat her, you better be ready for a scruffing battle.
That's
you
true.
know, on Tello, isn't there just something different about Tello Taitigui these days compared to the first time she ran for office?
Yes, yeah, there is. She has, and I know this personally, when she was first in the legislature, there was a crutch. It was the administration. It was the first term of the Calvo administration. Now she has absolutely no crutch. She's a completely independent member of the legislature. And many times Tello Taitigui is the one saying what we in the public are screaming when we're watching the legislature, you know, and so frustrated with our senators that my cousin Ray Gibson calls #dumbest bunch ever. And Tello is the one that comes out, or Therese Terlahi or Jim Moylan or Mary Torres, they come out and they're the ones saying, you know, what it is that we're screaming inside to say to our senators.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. I like the fact that she's now the leader of the caucus than before.
Yeah.
I will say she's definitely an independent voice. I wish I could tell you that we always agree on everything. we found ourselves sometimes in the opposite side of an
Sure.
issue. But I appreciate that we have a relationship where we can agree to disagree in things, and we understand each other. I'm not a big advocate of the recreational marijuana. That's my personal position.
yeah.
I've always thought that I've done law interdiction on drugs for a very, very long time, and my position is very strong on the potential negative impact that it could have. I'm strong supporter of medical marijuana, but she and I differ very strongly on our positions in those issues. And she is when I would have to say, when you go to a fight, you want to have a fighter in your side.
Yeah,
She's
you can't bring a
definitely
knife to a
fighter.
gunfight.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
a fighter.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, she is.
Yeah.
I love her. I love her. Thank you so much, Juan Carlos,
No
for
problem.
joining us. Did you want to make your final appeal on behalf of the Republican Party to?
Do you want to say something, though?
No.
Yeah, I would love to. And I would say, dear voters, my first thing is please exercise your right to vote. We've been provided through the new legislature the opportunity to do early voting. Please do early voting. I feel it's safer, and I've already exercised my right. That's the one way we are free to criticize individuals, because we exercise and we can say we didn't vote for them and we participated. Please look at reinstating the check and balance process in this island. I think we really need to have a very strong legislature that has an independent voice, that is willing to challenge the administration and provide a conservative and financially structured way out of this situation that has been created here in Guam during this pandemic. So please vote Republican and stay on our aisle. We have 15 very strong Republican candidates running, and I think that they would all enjoy your vote.
I'm going to vote for some Republicans. Definitely not all.
Thank you so much.
I'll take those. I'll take any Republican vote.
I knew you would. Thank you so much, Juan Carlos.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much. For Candid News, I'm Troy Torres.
And I'm Johnnie Rosario.
And I'm Carlos Pangilinan.
And
Juan Carlos Benitez.
good night.